microphone is up, and I am recording correctly. So I'm going to get started. I'll start with something that's not as important as people, continue to, come in. Yep.
I have a mildly unrelated question to it.
Go ahead.
Do they operate cisp360 over the summer?
No, not on this campus. I believe cisp360 is usually offered from Sac City, but not from AR.
Over the summer?
Yeah, we are lazy. We like to take our summer off here. Yep, go ahead.
How come you stopped teaching 360?
I've never taught 360.
Oh.
I only teach
You lied.
300. Sorry?
You lied.
370.
I only teach P300, P310.
Well, then how come you don't teach it?
Because I was not hired to teach C++. When we get hired, we have a specific, teaching assignment that they hire us for. So with me is teaching introduction to programming classes and also assembly language programming classes. So that's why those two are the ones that I pick up. Now that Professor Fox is retiring, so I'm also picking up one of his classes, which is cisp440 discrete structure, which is basically a math class. So you will see me again in pre and post conditions and the analysis algorithms, the big old notation, time complexity, and all that good stuff. Proof by contradiction, proof by induction,
And that's going to be on the website. That's going to be on the YouTube channel.
Yeah. Well, once I start to teach those classes, yep, definitely. Yep.
So you don't teach 360?
I do not teach 360, and this is the reason why I want to show you guys.
I don't like the person I have to take.
Well, I think it's good to have variety. I mean,
well, no. I've already had him. I don't want him.
Okay.
The other one's already full, and the wait list is closed. It was closed before pre-opening. It was closed at 0 priority.
It was closed to 0 priority.
In 0 priority, it filled up. The wait list was already
Yeah.
full. Yeah.
Yep. Wow. So do they have subgroups within 0 priority, or they're all? Oh.
Yeah.
So in 0 priority, like I got on 360, I'm third on the wait list. But by the end of 0 priority, Mirage was full.
Wow. Okay. Well, I do want to show
But
you.
Mirage is full, but Antos is open.
Okay.
He's way open.
Yeah, he's got plenty of them.
Okay. Well, I do want to show you, because this is the next class that most of you, are going to take is cisp360. I believe even for math majors, you have to take cisp360. Is that right? Okay.
Depending on where you go.
Depending. Okay. So this is the next class. It's a 4-unit class, unlike this one. Okay, P300 is a 3-unit class because we don't have any labs. Okay, we do have homework assignments where you do the tracing, but the other one actually has computer lab where the professor is in the lab helping you to actually write the programs. Because in this class we don't actually write programs. We don't have to deal with compilers and a whole bunch of other tools that you have to in cisp360. There are basically 2 sections. One section, as you said, is closed even to some 0 priority students. You got onto wait list.
I'm on 3. Yeah.
You're third on wait list, which probably means you can get into the class. So anyway, the first one is taught by Professor Subseveri. His first name is Iraj. It's partially online, okay? So both sections are partially online because whenever you see TBA, that means that portion is online. So a portion of the lecture is online, a portion of the lab is also online. This is done so that we can utilize our classrooms a little bit more effectively, so they don't take up the classroom and the lab as much. This is the evening class. You can see that the lecture time starts at 5:20. It ends at 6:10 and meets only on Mondays and Wednesdays. So that's not really a lot of time. It is half the time that we meet in this particular class. Okay, is that 40 minutes? Yeah, it is 40 minutes. It's half the time that we meet in this class, which means a part of the lecture is quote-unquote online, which means you have to study and read the textbook, to basically finish up the other half. The lab time is right after, so it starts at exactly 6:10 and it lasts until 6:40. So it all depends on how the professor wants to allocate the time. He probably has an option to allocate all the time for lecture. Well, I take it back, he cannot, because you can see the classroom also changes. The lecture portion is in 121, which is this room, and then the lab portion is in 152B, which is in our main computer lab, and he cannot do lecture in that computer lab because there'll just be a lot of people and other classes at the same time. The other class is taught by Professor Entos. Damon is his first name. So Damon is going to teach this one. This is a morning class. Starts at 8:30 to 9:45 for the lab. Oh, so there's no lecture time. So he only has partial lab once in the morning, once in the afternoon, but the lecture is completely online. So there are no lectures to the second portion of the CISP 360 class. So I'm not quite sure, how that's going to be conducted, and also how the class would actually be taught, because there's no lecture. There's no face-to-face
He has
lecture.
videos that he wants you to watch. He requires videos from you too.
I don't know whether he's requiring that type of interaction.
I have a friend in the class right now.
Oh, okay.
They're required to watch YouTube lectures and read the book.
Right.
And you're tested on it before he even covers it in class.
Yeah.
And
Test it and then he covers it.
And then so.
And then he can tell you how you got it wrong, right?
Yeah.
After.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there you have it. That's CISP 360 for next semester. After you take CISP 360, then you can take CISP 310, which I will teach. CISP 310 has been taught in spring only for the past 3 or 4 years. But starting next fall, we are changing it. So we'll be offering that every semester again. Okay.
So you'll do fall and spring for 310?
I will do it in fall
next year.
2014.
Yeah.
So that means once you get past the CISP 360 in spring, then you can take it in the fall.
But you'll be teaching it next semester? Not next semester,
Spring
after summer.
15.
After summer.
Yeah, fall.
Okay.
Yeah, fall 2014. So that's the way it is being scheduled at this point, because Damon said, we have enough students now. In the past, there was one time when we hardly have enough students to get our classes going. So at that time, they had to combine 2 semesters into one, just so that we have enough students for a class to go, at least 22 students.
Yeah.
Now, for the past 2 years at least, since we're only offering once a year, the class size went from 22 or barely 22 to over 50.
So are they going to add more?
Sections? Once every semester is going to be good for this class. Usually, and my class size is still up to 40, so I can accommodate everybody in that case. Yep.
Why I cannot take 2 classes at the same time?
Say again?
Why I cannot take 2 classes at the same time?
Why you cannot take 360 and 310 at the same time? Because 310 depends on certain concepts taught in CISP 360. In fact, I would say
Pre-rec for
right.
310.
So if I want to draw a picture, it's going to look like this. P300, which is this class, talks about, I would say in general, the very general purpose programming concepts. Okay, conditional statements, they are universal. It doesn't matter which programming language you look at, they have conditional statements, loops, subroutines, parameters, variables, okay, numbers, arrays. So all of those concepts are pretty much universal. It is language independent. Okay. Then you move on to the next class, which is P360. That's specific to C++. Okay, but it's not taught using the object-oriented way. It's mostly just taught as a procedural programming language. So from here, you start to branch out. So you actually start to have multiple classes that you can take after P360. P400 is the object-oriented programming class, where the focus is on how to design your program, how do you structure your code so it's easy to maintain and easy to upgrade and easy to make changes. So that's P400. It doesn't talk about the procedural aspect as much anymore. It focuses more on the design. Okay? And then you can also take cisp300, which takes you to the opposite direction. This is C++, this is assembly language programming. So it takes you down, to a lower level. In fact, this is the lowest level of programming you can do with any type of computers. But it does help to explain certain things, the bad things that can happen to a C++ program. Without this class, you can write certain types of programs in C++ where the symptom of the problem cannot be explained. You look at the program, you will just go look at the program, look at the behavior of the program, and say, it's impossible. This is just impossible. But with the knowledge that you gain in cisp300, then you can say, oh, this kind of weird symptom is most likely because of this type of bug, and then you know where to start looking at least. So that's why cisp300 has, I think it has a certain value when it comes to actual practical programming, even if you are not going to do assembly language programming ever. After this class, it will still be helpful because it gives you an insight of how a C++ program actually behaves under the hood. Okay. Now, after 400, the current way it is structured is after 400, you take 430, which is data structure. This one teaches object-oriented programming. This one makes use of object-oriented programming and say, okay, now how do you use arrays and records and stuff like that to make complicated, quote-unquote, structures in computer programming. Okay, so we're talking about binary search tree, we're talking about hash tables and stuff like that, things that are really useful in practical programming. So that's 430. And 440, I cannot remember which one it depends on. I would say it goes off from 400. I'm not 100% sure.
It says it's a.
You can scroll down on the screen.
Yeah, it says it's a co-recursive. Read
On the screen.
Okay, let me take a look here. The 440 has a co-requisite of 430. So that means you can take these two in the same semester. So I think they this dependency has to stand as well, because if it is co-requisite, if the co-requisite is 430, that means you'd have to have taken 400 already by the time you try to enroll in.
But you have to have trig in order to have an pre-calc. Or pre-calc, I'm sorry.
Math 370 is also a prerequisite, right? It's basically, I would say that trig itself is not required, but you do need to understand algebra and a lot of the more abstract way of thinking in mathematics. Basic proof techniques, at least understanding what it is, how to go from one step to the next. Those are the things that are actually required in CISP 440, because if you look at the description, it is an introduction to the essential discrete structures. Discrete structure is really math, okay? It's really proofs used in computer science with emphasis on the application. Topics covered include elementary formal logic, set theory, elementary combinatorics, recursive programming, algorithm analysis, finite state machines, formal languages, digital logic, switching, and so on and so forth. It's a stir fry, okay? It has a lot of different components, basically, put into the same dish, so to speak. But it's mostly the math portion of computer science. So you can look at this as a sampler, okay, of the non-actual coding part of computer science. Yep.
When do you take 350?
350 is not a part of the transfer degree, so you can take it
Anytime.
anytime, but it does it has no prerequisite, so you can take it anytime you want to.
I'm taking it right now.
It's database programming, and it uses Oracle. So if you have a particular use of Oracle, at work or something, that class can be helpful. They do have when you CISP 350 is kind of interesting because on one hand it has SQL, which is non-procedural, but on the other hand, Oracle also has a procedural programming language that is kind of like our pseudocode in this class. So if after you take this class, you can take P350 and you still have a slight advantage over the other students who have not taken any programming classes before. But it's not a part of your transfer degree, so it's not going to help you to get a computer science degree. It's not required for transfer.
Recommend taking it though?
It depends. I mean, if you find application, sure. I mean, but otherwise, if you find other classes that is more useful for your major, you know, you don't have to take
Depends
this
on
one.
what you want to do in the field too. If you want
Right.
to go more into database,
You can take it later, you know, at a
yeah,
different
into
college.
database type stuff. SQL is pretty widely used.
Oracle is widely used, you know, because it has a lot of, it's basically entrenched in a lot of corporate databases. So it's definitely something that's useful, but whether it's immediately useful to you if you're on track to a 4-year university, that's kind of debatable.
That's debatable.
That
It's
is
a
debatable.
requirement for the associates in database administration. So-
Right, because in that case, you know, it is directly related. So it depends on what your goal is.
It's a requirement for the associates in database administration. That's why I just took it, or I am taking it.
Yep. So, but this is the core, this is the real core of a computer science transfer degree, which allows you to get a transfer degree in computer science, then you can transfer to a CSU or a UC. And I think in computer science, you know, that is pretty much a requirement to get a bachelor's degree first, you know, is a good thing. Except for very few people, and those people are getting fewer and fewer. They can get a job, you know, without having a degree first. But I think, you know, that's getting more and more rare these days. And the boom is actually happening right now. I was just reading the newspaper. I'm pretty sure some of you have read the Sacramento Bee. I think it's yesterday or a few days ago. It talks about in San Francisco, there have been a record high number of evictions. And we are not talking about, you know, renters who cannot pay up. We are talking about the landlord selling the apartment complex for a lot of money and then just move to somewhere else. And there was a case where the landlord, you know, used unlawful means to try to get the tenants out, and, you know, was indicted. I think the mom paid the bail, and then the kids, you know, took off, and then the mom had to hire a private investigator to track down her own kids, bring them back, so that they would pay the $500,000 back to her. Yeah, but it's crazy now in San Francisco. I think the median price of a residential, you know, single family residential house property is $800,000. That's the median. And with $800,000, even now that our real estate market here in Sacramento is getting slightly better, would still get you a pretty decent house. Okay, a decent lot, decent house.
It's a huge house.
I know people with a $1.5 million house, though.
$800,000 is the financing price. That's not, or is the front end financing price. It's not the total price you're going to pay on that house.
Right. That's right.
That's just the, hey, I'm going to sign for this on the dotted line price.
Yep. If someone wants to, you know, do me if someone doesn't like me, you know, they can give me a $2 million house and say you cannot, you know, sell it, because just the property tax will sink me.
Plus, some people are dropping.
And you cannot
cash on
sublet it
this
either. Yep.
I was gonna say, it depends on when they purchased the house and if they gifted it to you.
Yeah, that's true.
Because then
No,
it's
no.
on their original.
Right.
It's on their original
But if the price recorded to the county is, you know, $2 million, just the
Yeah,
property
yeah.
tax is gonna kill me. Yep. Yeah, but the boom is happening right now, which means, you know, when you graduate, that boom may have leveled out already. But I wouldn't worry about it, because, you know, there's no way, you know, tech can go down, you know, for long times anymore. You know, there are just, you know, different types of fields. Okay, computer gaming definitely is going to be very cyclic. You know, depends a lot on industry and whatnot. Facebook, for instance, is no longer the company to work for, right? You guys know that, you know, Facebook is not really the hip thing to do anymore. It becomes the quote unquote the parents' website, not the kids' website anymore. But Google is still doing well. If you really want to get into a field where it is challenging all the time and there are jobs all the time, computer security is what you want to get into. There's no way computer security will be even cyclic. It's not even going to be cyclic because there's a constant demand of those people.
And they're not going
Risky as hell.
You're not going to outsource it. You're not going to have someone from India remote controlling your security team for a huge company.
It kind
Not gonna
of
do it. No.
That's the whole thing with Edward Snowden. He was working for Booz Hamilton, which was a security contractor. So they do outsource this stuff. It happens all the time.
But I'm saying if you're a company and you want your systems protected, are you going to hire someone to do it remotely? No.
it depends on what you're doing.
Well, the remote access to
security.
Oh, yeah.
you're an idiot if you're doing that. You want an on-site person.
Welcome to corporate America.
No, if I owned a company, I'm not going to pay.
Oh my God.
You know what I
You
mean?
would think that we wouldn't outsource farming, but we do.
Yeah.
Actually, what you do want to do is to hire, someone overseas to do white hat, hacking on your site.
Testing.
Yep, because just tell them, if you break into this website, I'll pay you, $10,000 in 10,000 US dollars, and they will try their best to do it.
Of course, that's a risky thing these days now
Yeah.
too, because of the current legal status and that sort of thing. You can get
The DMCA.
No, the other one, the Computer Fraud Abuse Act, CFAA, I think it is. Yeah, Andrew Arnheimer, his case with AT&T, he embarrassed AT&T,
Right.
and that got him thrown into prison. So.
Yeah,
Actually,
plus-
they just had another case here recently that a company was trying to go against an employee, and the employee was just using the computer. They weren't hacking or anything like that, and they tried to define non-corporate use as hacking.
Yeah, they slapped him
And
with
the
it.
judge said no, that's
Really?
not hacking.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
they're starting to set bounds on some of those
Well, that's
legal
good.
Mhm.
They're starting to set legal limitations on some of the definition of that.
Well, on that subject, this is one of the oldest websites
Oh my
that
God.
consolidates all kinds of news intended for geeks, right? So they just changed something here. This was the last one that when I left my office. But I do want to show you. This one is kind of funny. Somebody stole radioactive cobalt 60 in Mexico, and they found the car abandoned on the road, and the case was open, and people, apparently whoever stole the vehicle did not know what cobalt 60 was, and that it's highly radioactive, and they opened up the case and it was exposed. And the official said, those people are not going to live very long because, once they get exposed to, high intensity radioactive material like this, they're not going to last very
They'll
long.
find it before too long. They'll find that source. Seriously, they will.
Oh, yeah.
They have the means to track that kind of stuff.
And then we have Microsoft, pushing again and say that they will pay more attention and put more resources into encrypting consumer data and making software code more transparent. That's exactly my reaction. It's like, okay, they have claimed to have started to do this many times before, and their encryption is next to
It
useless.
says it lacks NSA backdoors.
I know, really.
Yeah.
They can't even say what the back doors they have at this point.
Well, because the company has gone so big, they can't even remember, what they have done with their products anymore. This one I found is kind of interesting. eBay founder pleads for leniency for the PayPal 14 suspect. The 14 members of Anonymous, the Anonymous group. You guys know what they are?
No. Yeah.
No? Okay. They are called hacktivists. Instead of activists, they're called hackivists. So basically, they are activists who would hack websites that they think is opposing their ideals. Okay, so they are hackers basically. But there are 14 people that were caught in this particular DDoS attack against PayPal. So even though there were a lot more people taking part in the process, these 14 are basically bearing the entire responsibility of having the PayPal website brought down due to the DDoS, the denial of service attack.
They using that ion cannon or something?
Yeah, the low orbit ion, whatever. Yeah, they modified the code to do that. So that's kind of interesting. And then you have NSA tracking cell phone locations.
What website is this?
Worldwide.
/dot.
The name /dot is because when you tell someone a URL, you say http:// and then you say, so now it becomes http:// so people who don't know that /dot is the name with an extra slash and a dot. That was the original idea of the name, is to kind of try to confuse people, where the website is. But this is interesting. If you think about it, the NSA is tracking cell phone locations worldwide. If you look at the number, 5 billion records a day on the whereabouts of cell phones around the world. We are talking about a huge amount of data collected on a daily basis. Okay? So right now, right at this instance, my cell phone's location is being recorded. Okay?
You can turn off some of that.
Well, you
can
can
triangulate it.
No, it's probably done through cell towers.
Yeah, triangulation of cell towers. If you want to throw it off, you can use a antenna so that it
Faraday
picks up
cage.
a Faraday cage, and you use an antenna so it talks to a more remote cell tower than the one that are actually local to you. So now it will throw you off and know.
Well, you'd
But
have
then
to go back
it'll
and
use
look at-
Wi-Fi. Then it can.
They can do it by
Use it by Wi-Fi.
You'd have to
It's
go
like
back to the
GI.
Bitnik days of hacking the phone system and faking where you are.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
You can VPN.
I say revert to smoke signal.
Yeah.
Tin can in the string, right? Yeah.
Say again?
Throw your phone on the ground, smash with a hammer. Smoke signals instead.
Unfortunately, it's not going to be.
Remember
easy to
last
sample
time you
that,
went
so.
to get a vaccination, they already injected you with nanobots.
Has anybody, I have a question. Has anybody in the room ever tried to go 1 year without a cell phone?
I tried camping, which is like a week without a cell phone.
I did it for 2 straight years when my first daughter was born, and
Uh-huh.
I swear to God, it was the best thing in my life.
Yeah, it really.
I'm not kidding you. It friggin' ruins your life. Like right now, I don't have my cell phone on me.
Mhm.
You have so much more concentration. You think that while you're listening to music on your phone doing homework, and then you get a text, and you get a. Well, if you look at most of the studies that come from corporate education stuff, stuff like that, they there's like an average span of when you're distracted from work or in class, that you have a 5-minute distraction time, then you have an average of a 10-minute detraction where you're actually performing something else other than what you're doing, and then it takes you another 10 minutes to get back on track, and you just lost 40 minutes of production right there. Well, if you think about it, one text message, there was some data on it, I can't remember what it was, but it was like 9 minutes just
Wow.
to see one text message.
Wow.
That's why I deleted my Facebook. Way too much time on my phone. All the time.
Like freaking alcohol.
Alcohol is way better than Facebook. I'm not
Tired
giving
of
up
social
alcohol.
media.
Yeah, well,
Dial-up days.
Facebook is, I think the time sync, this was done about a year ago. People spend more time on Facebook than Wikipedia. I just find that, completely, I cannot explain that. I can spend a lot of time on
I'll say
Wikipedia.
ignorant.
I just keep right-click, new tab, right-click, new tab, right-click, new tab, and before long, I cannot read the tabs anymore because it's like that across the screen. So I'll go through each one. Okay, I finished reading this one, move on to the next one, and so on. And it has just a vast amount of information on just about anything that I want to know. It's just entertainment. Yep.
Well, it's like the difference between people like reading like People magazine and US Weekly and stuff like that instead of reading books. Like you see people around in magazines all the time.
Yeah.
They picked up War and Peace. They might actually like learn something new today.
But the nice thing about Wikipedia compared to reading a book is the hyperlinks, right? You can just right-click on a hyperlink and say, okay, I don't really understand this concept. I have a general idea of what it is, but I'm going to read about it next. So you have another tab open, and then another tab because of that, and so on. It becomes.
And then you have to open a new window, and then you create a whole other new tab.
So now you have to start to read recursively, right? Yeah, you guys like that recursion thing. I know that. Well, this is also interesting. Tech companies set to appeal 2012 Oracle versus Google ruling. Now, this one is actually quite significant because it changes the landscape again, between Oracle and Google, and also what people can sue other people over. If you read the rest of this, you will see that originally the lawsuit is because Oracle thinks that Google use Java in Android. Okay, Android is Java program, but Java is a programming language, and the programming language cannot be protected. You cannot say, okay, this is my programming language, and you cannot implement something that would accept the same programming language. So what Oracle is suing Google for is the implementation of Java. And Google did not, Android, which is a separate company originally, did not use any Oracle code. They basically rewrote the entire virtual machine from scratch. Okay. However, so at the end, the entire lawsuit boiled down to 9 lines of code that has to be there. Okay, in the implementation, in Google's implementation. An argument over a simple and basic comparison of a range of numbers. And in this particular case, the judge who had, okay, if you just kind of read this part here, I'm going to highlight a portion of it. Okay. The presiding judge, who had some background in writing software, didn't buy it, stating he had written blocks of code like check range check 100 times before, and therefore you cannot sue somebody over something that is just common. Okay, it's like there's one way of doing it, and people do it every day 100 times. Okay. This week, however, Microsoft EMC. Now EMC, most people think EMC. What is EMC? It sounds like a really kind of small and insignificant company, but EMC is actually a huge company supporting the infrastructure, the back end of the servers. Okay, EMC as a company makes mass store subsystems. Now, when I talk about mass store subsystems, I'm not talking about a hard drive. I'm not talking about a rack of hard drives. I'm talking about an entire huge appliance, and you plug in a fiber optic cable to that thing, and it serves racks and racks and racks of servers from one single mass store subsystem. It's a very specialized kind of thing, and most people don't even get to see it because it's really at the back end of everything. But it is also very important because when you have terabytes and terabytes of information to back up, if you don't have the right infrastructure and the right architecture, it might take more than a day to do a daily backup. Then you're stuck, right? So you have to do it right so that you have the right bandwidth, the right strategy, and the right architecture to do the backup in a way that the backup is actually useful. It's actually of some use in case of a failure. So EMC is a huge company. Currently it owns VMware, okay, which is the virtual machine company at this point. So EMC is a big company, has a lot of muscle behind it. Oracle definitely has a lot of muscle behind it. So all of these companies have filed for appeal and seek to reverse the ruling. So if the ruling is reversed, that will have consequences when it comes to Google, Android, and also all the other companies that will be sued in the near future. Because they're basically saying, yeah, we can sue over 9 lines of code, and it's not even innovative. It's not like, wow, these 9 lines of code, very few people would have thought about doing something like that this way. Nope, it's simple range checking code. And the problem is, if you read the rest of it, it's not looking good as the new bevy of judges indicating they may side with Oracle on the issue.
So are they going to be computer illiterate?
Probably.
But the issue becomes how how general can your concepts in your programming be in order for you to handle control over whether you can sue someone else or hold someone else to copyright infringement?
A lot of this, is borderline politics, because if you
Sure.
look at, some of these judges, they might have been attorneys working for some of these companies before.
Right.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying it is in this case,
Right.
but it is entirely possible, because we have attorneys who used to work for the food industry, now working in for USDA.
Right, USDA.
Yeah, so they basically
That should
say,
be illegal.
oh, you mean meat industry inspection? We don't need to do that anymore. We can trust those companies, right?
I want to see 9 lines of code.
Yeah, where are the actual 9 lines?
Oh, there we go.
Right there.
There.
That's actually written in.
That's in Java.
I think that's. I
Actually,
cannot
it's
tell.
not. No.
It can be C++, can be Java, but I think it's C++ because it's the implementation of Java, right? Yep. I mean, even we understand this code in this class,
Yeah.
right? This is cisp300. This is the first programming class of the entire degree, and we can look at this code and go, yeah, we have a general understanding of what it is.
How can you say that you couldn't come up with that code? How can you
Exactly.
say that it's so
Politics.
proprietary that you couldn't come up with
Okay,
that code?
so we understand what a procedure is, right?
Mhm.
A subroutine. Okay, this is a subroutine. Okay, the
Private-
syntax is not
private
the same as what we do in this class. Yep, go ahead.
Wouldn't, if they ruled in favor of Oracle, wouldn't that have implications, like, not even just in the programming field as well, though? Like, on what you can sue for in, like, I don't know, the peanut butter recipe of Jiffy being too close to that of,
Yep.
Yeah.
or for Walmart's brand of, whatever it's called.
McDonald's can sue your home cooking recipe and say, hey, your homemade fries smells exactly
close,
like
yeah.
ours.
Or like when people,
Yep.
like, I love the Subway double chocolate chip cookies, so I looked up a recipe on how to make them.
Well,
And
and
it
that-
says on there, like double chocolate chip cookie, just like Subway, and like you could be sued for that. Like
Yeah.
if they
Yeah.
pass this because you're doing a
And that's
recipe
what I'm saying,
too
in
close to their cookie.
in a sense, if your general concept is so close to something else,
But this is
or is exactly something else, then you're gonna be sued for copyright infringement on a lot of your software development.
well, that's basically how it has been for a while already. This is nothing new, unfortunately.
What does this code actually do?
Well, let's take a look. Okay, this is a subroutine. Okay, so the use of the word void as a quote unquote return type, this is called return type, but in this class it simply means it does not return a value. So in this class it means that we use return line number instead of return info in this case, because the subroutine invocation does not produce a particular value to be utilized by the invoke statement. So that's basically what the void is. The name of the subroutine is range check, and these are the parameters. Okay, it has a by-value parameter array length. It has another by-value parameter called from index, and another one called to index. I'm not sure whether I'm not. Okay, there's a. Okay. And then that's so these three are the parameters, and everything is passed by value unless you see an ampersand in C++. So these are all passed by value. Okay, concepts that we already understand in this class. And they're all numbers. The int basically indicates that those are all integers. And we have a conditional statement here. If from index, which is one of my input parameters, is greater than the to index, okay, then we have a problem, because it is basically saying, okay, I'm trying to specify a range inside an array, but the from index is larger than the to index. It doesn't make any sense, right? Because the from index should be less than or equal to the to index. And it's just like in binary search, remember? In binary search, when B is greater than E, then we know there's a problem, because the index of the first element should be less than or equal to the index of the last element. Same thing here, okay? The only thing that we have not talked about in this class is what is a throw. Okay, a throw is throwing an exception. An exception is basically a condition that should not normally happen. But when it does happen, we want the program to exit gracefully and reporting what it is. So that's basically saying, okay, we have a problem that we cannot handle, and from here on, we have to back out of the entire program, but not crashing it, but reporting, okay, we have a problem, and this is the issue. The from index is this number. It is greater than the to index, which is this number. It is occurring on this line of code, and this is called by blah, 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 blah. Okay, so it gives you additional information to debug the program later on. That's what a throw is, or throwing an exception is. If that is not the case, if from index is less than or equal to index, it will move on to the next conditional statement. The next conditional statement is to say, okay, is the from index, which is indexing into an array, is it less than 0? Because anything less than a 0 is not a valid index. Okay, the valid index in an array goes from 0 to bar a bar minus 1. So anything that is negative is not going to be good. So it just throws another exception. In this case, the exception is array index out of bound, which is basically doing exactly the same thing as before. It will just report the line number and say, hey, we have a problem here. We're trying to index out of bound. Okay, and then the last one is to check the to index against array length, because it really should be greater than or equal to, because the index of the last element is bar a bar minus 1. Okay, so it's actually incorrect to begin with, assuming the to index is the index of the last element and not one past it. Okay, that's also possible. But basically, that's the code. It's really just checking. It's a sanity check of the from index and the to index to make sure that they make sense. We could have come up with this code in this class.
So then we should sue. If they can sue Google, we can do it too. Okay, we came up.
We cannot, because we cannot afford we cannot afford the lawyers, in a drawn out battle in the courtroom.
But
and
that's why you want us to take the little sub-major of the lawyer thing.
Yeah, you get a JD.
So then we can sue.
Well, with a JD you can go in either direction, right? You can do things.
But that would help having the CS background, because then you would actually know what if it's bullshit or not.
Yeah, but how many people implement a check like this? I mean, anyone could implement a check like this. That's what I'm saying is
any responsible programmer would have done something like this.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So it's like saying that you check your brakes or you check your lights on your car before you leave. Well, if your lights were out and you're driving at night, are you responsible or not responsible? The blame doesn't go to the auto manufacturer, it goes to you. You know, the general idea of putting a check in like this, anyone can do it.
And if I give you, in the next class, if I give you an assignment and I describe what you have to do, which is checking the range and the sanity value of a from index and a to index, and I tell you ahead of time what is the size of the array, which is the first item, array length, there are only so many ways of doing it, right? If I see two people turning in the same code, can I make the assumption that they copy from each other with something this simple? No, because there are only so many ways of doing things. I mean, you can change the order a little bit. You can check for less than 0 first. Then you can check for 2 indexes greater than array length. In other words, the order of these 3 conditional statements can be changed. Okay, you can switch them around any way you want, and it will still quote unquote make sense. Okay, so how many permutations do we get here?
We have 3 choices. People in your classes, and you have 2 classes at a time. 3 classes.
No. But I'm talking about how many permutations out of these 3 conditional statements, because the ordering of the 3 conditional statements can be changed. We have 3 choices for the first, 2 choices for the second, 1 choice left for the third one. 3 factorial is 6. So out of this class, which probably has about 42 students left, someone is going to be running into the same thing, right? I mean, and so Oracle is now saying, oh, if 2 people turn in the homework assignment, giving me the same code, using the same order, it is cheating.
Right.
That's basically what it's saying. So.
Just need to be the first one to turn in your homework.
So it'll be interesting to see, how the new.
So you can sue the other students for copying your work.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, isn't any programming you produce copyrighted to yourself anyway?
Only if you state that it is copyrighted, I think.
Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
I can't remember what the general.
So it'll be interesting to see, how the appeal, progress, whether the ruling gets reversed or not.
Do we know when the case will?
Huh?
Do we know when the case is? Do we know when they're going to have the?
Well, he already ruled, but they'd have to go to appeal, so that's
Right.
probably going to be.
They're
like
they're
6 months.
appealing.
Okay.
So
Probably
if you
6
yeah.
months or 9 months, what happens?
So if you go to is in danger on appeal, this was it just came out today. Case below. Yeah, so you can go ahead and just kind of read about it. There are if the appeal is does go through and the ruling gets reversed, I think there will be consequences after that too. There will be
No more Android?
No, just monetary issues as far as that
Android
goes.
will just get really poor.
And then lawsuit issues with software development.
Nobody is safe. I would
Yeah.
say
Well,
just say
is
that
an
nobody's
attack
safe
on
after
open
that.
source? Is that basically an attack on open source?
Not really. This is not open source. I mean, it is in
No.
a way. Sorry.
AOSP is open source, but the main criticism of it is it's really just leveraged by Google. So basically, open source allows you a lot of good things. Like if you're a developer and you want to go and you want to look at the source code, it allows you to do a lot of really neat things. It allows you to debug it a lot faster. So basically, they're utilizing that as all really good things of open source. But if you really want to if you want to commit to AOSP, they're just going to throw it out pretty much, unless you have really, really good grounds or you point out this is a major bug that needs to be fixed.
Do you want to explain what is AOSP?
AOSP is Android open source project.
Okay.
So basically, what Google did was they bought this company Android, which was making an operating system for your phone. And what they did was they completely made it open source, so anyone can sort of look at it, copy it. And so what you end up with is you have a whole bunch of people oh, Android's a cool concept. Let me sort of make my own brand. So you have Cyanogen or Paranoid Android or those different sort of things you can do. They're essentially, they cloned the original AOSP
Linux,
code.
yeah.
Exactly, it's like Linux.
Which by itself is not a bad thing.
No.
When does it become a bad thing?
It becomes quote unquote a bad thing when there are so many branches out there, that a normal consumer can no longer figure out which one should I use,
Yeah, but even Linux was it Linux that went through its own series of cascades, and you kind of have specialty markets for the different specialty forms of it, like
Red
Debian and
You mean the distributions?
the distributions. Yeah, sorry.
The distributions are basically essentially different ways of distributing the operating system and the other bundled, quote unquote, bundled applications to go with it. So if you want to start your own distribution, you are definitely free to do so. I mean, Debian was the original, well, one of the originals. There's Fedora or Red Hat, and there's Debian, and I think there are a few more, originally. But they basically, everything boiled down to just the Debian type of distribution and the Red Hat type distribution, and also Gentoo, that would be the third one, because they have an entirely different way of distributing software compared to Debian and Red Hat. So there are basically three main mechanisms of distributing the software. But you might specialize your distribution to using the latest and greatest, drivers, so it would run on more modern, computers. Or you might specialize your distribution to work more like, in the servers, okay? But everything is rock solid. You apply all the possible patches and so on and so forth. So you can customize your distribution and just say, okay, now I have my own distribution. If there are people who like your distribution, then you can get your distribution up in popularity and people can start to use it. So that's what open source allows you to do, because if it's closed, if it's proprietary, you cannot do that. You cannot take Microsoft Windows and say, okay, I'm going to make a specialized distribution of Windows for efficiency. Okay, so this will run on machines with less resources, right? You cannot, because Microsoft doesn't let you do anything like that.
Windows 98.
XP.
XP was pretty solid. I liked it.
Funny we talk about that because now we are going to digress again to.
Well, this is important.
Well, because you just mentioned that, right? China prefers sticking with dying Windows XP to upgrading.
That's going to be bad.
It uses a lot yet less resources and it works okay.
No.
And all the backdoors are figured out already.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
they understand all the backdoors already. They don't need the new and unknown backdoors from Windows 8.1. Yeah. We have patched, the Chinese government has already patched Windows XP to make it secure enough. Yeah, that's, well, it's interesting. So Slashdot is a kind of good, interesting website, because it doesn't really generate its own news. It's just readers of Slashdot, they all contribute and say, oh, I just read this somewhere else, and they put it here so that everybody else can actually read it and go, oh, okay, I didn't know, this just happened. So that's that's interesting. Alrighty, so now we are finally getting back to exam 2. As much as we don't want to. I heard that. Okay, so this is the second question. The second question is asking you to trace the pseudocode until and up to, including and up to the first time line 7 executes. So this is line 7 here. This is the current state of the trace. So what I'll do is I'm going to copy and paste this into an actual spreadsheet, and then we'll go ahead and trace it. We'll just copy and paste this into. Yep, go ahead.
What program did you use to create the test?
I used LibreOffice.
Which part of it?
The whole test.
Oh, I mean, like which part of LibreOffice? Like, is it like their?
Oh, I use Writer to do this part here is done in Writer, but I use Calc to do the table, and then I just copy and paste it. Yep. Yep. You can do the same thing with Microsoft Office too. You can take a portion of a spreadsheet and paste it into a Word document.
Right.
And there are ways you can paste into it so that if you make changes to the spreadsheet, the quote-unquote window that you can see through in your Word document will change as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you can do the same thing with PowerPoint presentations. In other words, if your PowerPoint presentation is based on, let's say, all the data that you collected for a chemistry class, okay, you can make that link to the original spreadsheet live, so that when you make changes to the spreadsheet, the next time you run not the next time, the presentation will change, automatically right away.
It's a link document. Link document.
Yeah, it's called DDE, a long time ago. It's called DDE, Dynamic, I can't remember. That's why we have Wikipedia. All right, so this is a portion of it. This is the trace part. I'm going to copy and paste this into the trace part of the spreadsheet here. So I'm going to put it into sheet 2. And now we only have to refer to this spreadsheet. Okay, so here's the algorithm, here's the trace. We'll go ahead and finish this question. All right. Okay, line 2 is all done already, okay, because you can see that after line 2, n has a value of 3. Now, your question may not have exactly the same value, but they are, relative speaking, they are the same, okay, so you're still working on the same algorithm, and it requires the same number of lines to trace through it. Okay, after line 2, we get to line 3. Line 3 is going to evaluate n is less than 4. Is that true or false?
True. True.
N is less than 4 is true. We go on to line 4. Line 4 is going to invoke the subroutine again, which means we have to allocate another line, another column for return line number. Now this test was done before we talk about return values, so that's why return line number is the only thing you can do in this case. It doesn't even have parameters. So once you set up the return line number, you have to tell me which line should we return to after this particular invocation of fx. Okay, we go to 5, and then we continue execution in the subroutine starting on line 2, and we add 1 to n. The n is a global variable. Okay, this is before. Well, this is after we talk about local variables, but I told you guys that you don't have local variables in the test, so this has to be a global variable. So n gets incremented from 3 to 4. Then we get to line 3 again. N is less than 4 is false because n is 4. 4 is less than 4 is false. Then we skip around the entire conditional statement and we end up on line 7. So you cannot stop right here. You have to tell me what line 7 is going to do. Line 7 is going to look up the rightmost return line number, which is in column E. Make a note of we have to continue on line 5 and deallocate the return line number column. And that is the answer. Because we have just executed up to and including line 7 the first time. Yep.
If we just did, like, filled in N for 5, I know you said up to 7, but if we dot points, if we,
Forget to deallocate?
No, if we just wrote for the last line there, just put like N is now 3. So that's what happens on line 5.
You mean additional information?
Yeah, like.
Oh, if you trace further than this, it's fine. No, not a problem. I will only check it up to this point.
Okay. Is this essentially a broken or infinite loop?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Because after we get back onto line 5, we do want to decrement n by 1, but we are not invoking fx anymore. So it will just continue to backtrack, and it will just continue to return.
9 doesn't invoke fx again.
9.
So
Yeah,
I
but
thought the problem with it kept going from 4 to 3 and just kept.
no, it won't.
Okay.
Yeah, if you keep tracing it, you will know what I mean. Because we will just continue to return, but there are no additional invokes after this.
I thought we just go to 7 and then we just go to post.
Yeah, exactly. The next time we go back to 7, we'll just go to post, and then we're all done. That is correct, and that's why it's not infinite.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, how would it loop? We just go to 7 and then post.
Yeah. It is.
Because n keeps getting switched back to 2, and then it keeps invoking at
No, but not keep invoking. There are no additional invocation. The invoke is on line 4, and then after we subtract 1 from n, there are no further invoke after that, because we just get out of the conditional statement and then we return. And the next time it's going to do the same thing. We'll return to line 5, and then we'll do the n gets n minus 1, and then we get out of the conditional statement, and then we return. But that return will return us to post, and then we are done. So it is not infinite. All right. So that is that. And let's move on to the next question. Okay, this question, I was kind of hoping that people remember what mod was, but apparently a lot of people do not remember what mod was. And I could not tell you what mod is during the test. Mod is the remainder of a division. That's what it is. Okay. I can see the expressions like, ah! Okay. All right. So knowing that is the case, let's go ahead and trace this one and get it over with. All right. So we just traced the entire thing. Line 1, I gets a value of 2. On line 3, a bracket I gets the value of I. I is 2. So a bracket I, a bracket 2 gets a value of 2. And the magical line is line 4, because what are we going to do when we're adding 5, which is more than bar a bar, to I? Well, since we're doing a mod 4, we're guaranteed the result is between 0 and 3. That's what the mod 4 is for, okay? To make sure that we are staying within that range. Okay. So I is 2, 2 plus 5 is 7. 7 mod 4 is 3. So I becomes 3 in this case. And then we move on to line 5. I equals to 0. I equals to 2 is false. Okay. and then we move on to line 3 again. And in this case, A bracket 3 gets a value of 3. And then we move on to line 4. 3 plus 5 is 8. 8 mod 4 is 0. Okay. So now, not yet. Go to line 5 first. I equals 2 is false. Then we go back to line 3. And on line 3, we go to A bracket 0 and put a value of 0 there. And then we go to line 4, we add 5 to 0, which means we have 5. 5 mod 4 is 1. So this time, I becomes 1. Then we go to line 5, we check whether it is time to get out. I equals 2 is false. Then we continue to line 3 again. On line 3, we add, we go to A bracket 1 and turn it into 1. And then we go to line 4. 1 plus 5 is 6. 6 mod 4 is 2. Then we go to line 5. I equals 2 is true. Then we get out of the loop, and we're done. So that's what the question 3 is.
That's the only good thing from the previous teachers. I had the book from this class, so I looked up mod.
Well, it is also in my notes. If anyone prints out my notes, it's in there too. That was. All right, question number 4. Question number 4, I think, is probably one of the more difficult questions to figure out. But on the other hand, I don't think it's that difficult. It really has very little to do with recursion itself. It has more to do with the binary search algorithm. Yes, go ahead.
Was there 4 questions or 5?
There were 5 questions, but the last one was messed up. It was my fault. Okay, so question number 4 is a recursive version of binary search, and I give you a partial trace result. Up to a certain point, we have 2 allocations of return line number. One is post, that one is easily explained, and the other one comes from line 12. But the most important part is the relationship between B and E. Okay? Well, B is already greater than E at this point. Okay? In fact, it is one is 2 and the other one is 1. So the question was, how can we get to this point? How can we substitute a value of K so that we can get to the point where B is greater than E and we came from line 12? Okay? So you have to, sorry?
Oh, just if it wasn't in the array, right?
It cannot be in the array, for one. But you also have to know, where is that value? Okay, is it between A bracket 0 and A bracket 1? Between A bracket 1 and A bracket 2? Or between A bracket 2 and A bracket 3? That is the trick. Okay? Okay, so let's go back to the algorithm here and let's look at line 12. The return line number is 12, which means the recursion comes from line 10. Okay? All right. So let me copy and paste it first because it's hard to have to scroll up and down to look at the algorithm. So I'm going to copy and paste it first so it's easier to read both the pseudocode and also the trace itself. Use the trace.
Wait, it has to come from, but it's false.
Well, let's take a look first. So we'll go to. All right.
It has to go through regardless.
Okay. So we have the trace. Where's the algorithm? Oh, okay, it's in the same window. I have to. It's a new window. There we go. There we go. Need to find a way to fit it. Oh, this is okay. I think this is,
Yeah, we noticed it.
that's fine. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now we have both the algorithm and the partial trace up at the same time. And if you look at the partial trace, we are currently on line 9, which is here. And the evaluation of the condition of the conditional statement is done for you. Okay, it is false. Okay, so we know that the value that we are looking for is not in the array because B is already greater than E. The question is, what value K should have in order for me to end up here? That is the question. Okay. Well, first of all, we know K cannot be one of these 4 values. Now, depending on your version of the test, those 4 values may not be what is displayed here, but you're guaranteed that you can find at least one value that will fit the bill and say, if I'm looking for this value, we'll end up in this state. Okay, so that is given. Well, we know that last operation could have changed E to 1 instead of changing B, so that we end up with this situation. We can also say that in the previous operation, it is possible that B got from 0 to 2, okay, or it gets from 1 to 2. Either one works, okay. So it can go from B and E being the same 2 2, and then 1 gets switched to 1. It can also be 1 1, and 1 gets switched to 2. So either one is going to be okay. So now here comes the question. If B equals 2 and E equals 2, then we are looking at column J, which is a value of 7. What do you think will trigger E to be changed to 1? We have to be looking for a value that is, we have to be looking for 6, then, okay, if you're looking for 6, then A bracket M is greater than K is going to be true. E will get M minus 1, and M is going to be 2. 2 minus 1 is 1, and that will fit the bill. So that means, in this particular case, if K is 6, that will basically lead you to the current situation. Is that making any sense? The other argument works too, because if you say that the loop before this, B and E are both 1, then looking for 6 will also cause B to get changed. Because in that case, 6 is greater than 5, and so B will get 1 plus 1, which is 2. So 7 will work in either case. Excuse me, having K equal to 6 will work in both cases. So that's the first part of the question, is whether you can find a value to fit in here so that the condition will happen. Let's say you found the wrong value. Yep, go ahead.
On all the tests, was it between array of 1 and 2?
Yes. It has to be because I did not change the relative position of B and E in all the versions.
So now you can continue with your statement. If we chose the wrong number.
Yes, if you chose the wrong number, then you can still get partial credit because you're supposed to trace it all the way to the end of the entire algorithm. So if you pick the wrong value, you just get 0 point for that particular portion of the test for this particular question. But if you just follow through this correctly, you will still get the partial credit, all the other partial credit for tracing it. So now we'll continue to trace. After line 9, where do we go? We know that line 9 has a condition that is false. Where do we go next? We go to line 12. Okay. So what do we do on line 12 in this case? It's the end of the subroutine. What do we do when we are at the end of a subroutine? We look up the rightmost return line number, which is column M in this case. Make a note of it. We're supposed to go back onto line 12, and then we have no use of column M anymore, and it is now deallocated. Okay, like that. Now we are on line 12 again. Do the same thing, exactly. Look up the rightmost active return line number. It is not M anymore. Now it is column L. Column L tells us to return to post. Make a note, and then deallocate that column. And now we are continuing execution at post, which means we're all done.
So that's 75% of the credit, right?
Yeah, exactly what most of it was.
I haven't done the allocation yet. But I intentionally separate it, so that you can get one part right and the other part wrong. You will still get partial credit.
How much is
I have not decided yet. That's the nice thing about Moodle is I can change the weight around a little bit, look at the overall grade, go like, nah, okay, I want to tweak it some more. Yeah.
Are we still doing roll sheet?
No, we're not doing roll sheet, and that's why you see quite a few people are currently missing.
Yeah, I was saying that.
We can watch the YouTube.
They can watch the YouTube, but I don't think it's the same.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the same. Sorry?
It's not.
It's not? Well, that tells you something about the next semester when you have to choose, which cisp300 to take. One has lecture completely online, and then the other one has a partial, lecture that is not entirely online. All right, so that is that. Oh, okay. Escape out of this one, and then go to the last one. This is the. Did I skip one?
Value of k on that. I chose 6, and I did it systematically, kind of like you had done.
Right.
But value of k, I put 5 less than k less than 7.
Say again?
So if you chose any
You put the-
between 5 to 7 would work.
Yeah, anything between 5 and 7 will work.
Okay, and I put that restriction first, and then I also put comma, and I just chose k equals 6.
Yeah, that'll be fine. Yeah, additional steps that kind of shows how you do the reasoning is going to be fine.
Okay, because I went both ways to see what would give me my limitations to choose the number, and not necessarily just one. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to the last one, which is the one that I messed up. So this is the last question. One of the question is now considered extra credit, because I messed up the last one. Okay, the last one was to ask, what do we put here to make the program crash?
Anything.
The answer is, well, it depends on, it depends on the value, but I think I made almost every single case, that it will always fail, in the end. No, I take it back. It will not fail in the end because it's not possible. The first condition, you will always get false first, and then that stops me from evaluating the second one, and basically the whole thing cannot crash because if one thing is false, the entire conjunction is false, and when the condition of a while loop is false, you get out of the loop, so you don't even get a chance to evaluate a bracket I plus 1 gets something. Let's go ahead and check it, double check. Let's see. No, this one will crash. Yeah, this one is going to crash because the sum is only 14 when I is 2. So a bracket 3 is going to crash when I try to store the sum.
I think I used negative numbers. Trying to find one that would work.
This one doesn't crash. Okay, we'll run it. We'll run it through.
Run it.
Well, the issue came in the fact that nothing you could do could ever change the values that were being added.
Right. But the thing.
So nothing you can do in this algorithm will actually change. So you're only given the ability to change one variable in the array.
Yeah.
No value you put in there can actually affect the outcome of the array because it gets changed.
It just doesn't get affected by the value that you choose. So it will the algorithm will continue to do whatever it was set out to do. It's set out to do to begin with. All right. So we'll go ahead and. Oh, by the way, I am taking an online class right now myself, just to find out what it is like to take a programming class online.
Which programming?
I'm taking a class in Android programming in Java, and it's interesting. This one is also this is done through Coursera. So if you spell course, like the class course, and you put in SERA as the ending, that's Coursera. It's done as a MOOC, MOOC, massively online something course. Okay, so I'm taking it along with hundreds, if not thousands, of other people. But it's still being taught as if it is a smaller online class. So the first homework assignment is orientation. Tell everybody about yourself. So now we have thousands of posts of people saying, I come from Thailand, and this is my first time taking a class in Java programming using with the Android platform. And you have it's interesting. There are people all over the world.
Can't even hardly read all the posts though.
No. And then there's a person immediately complaining and say, hey, how come this class only talks about how to use that tool in
Yeah, but the
Windows?
NSA will know which posts you checked, and then they'll know who you know, and then...
Yeah, the NSA is already on it, right?
Have any of you guys seen Chuck? It's a series on Netflix. He gets like all the information. It's cool. I like it.
That show's kind of...
I like it. It's kind of cool. If you like spy shit.
Okay, sum is less than 20 is true, and I is less than bar A bar, which is 3, is true. So the whole thing is true at this point. Let me just kind of... Should have closed some of the other ones, didn't I? Okay, I'm going to close some of these.
Which distro of Linux is this?
It doesn't teach about Linux. It teaches Android programming.
No, I mean, which distro of Linux do you use?
Even this one?
Yeah.
It's Debian based.
Yeah.
But it's my actual. I select which package to include here. Okay, so there we go. Window. Well, I just include the tools that I need.
Yeah.
So it's not too big. All right. So after line 3, we go to line 4. Sum gets sum plus a bracket I, and a bracket I is a bracket 0, which is 7. So sum is now 7. We go to line 5. A bracket 1 gets the sum, which is 7. Then we go to line 6. We add 1 to I. I goes from 0 to 1. Then we go back to line 3. Sum is 7. 7 is less than 20 is true. We have to evaluate the other side of the conjunction. I is 1. 1 is less than 3 is also true. True and true is true. We go to line 4. This time we store sum as 7 plus 7, which is 14. We go to line 5, and a bracket I plus 1 is a bracket 2, and that stores sum itself. So a bracket 2 is now 14. Then we go back to line 6. We add 1 to I. I goes from 1 to 2, and then we have go back to line 3. Sum is now 14. 14 is less than 20 is true. I is 2. 2 is less than 3 is true. So we get into the loop again on line 4. We have now sum is 14. I is 2. A bracket 2 is also 14. 14 plus 14 is 28. So sum is now 28. Then we move on to line 5. A bracket I plus 1 gets S is now we have a problem because I is 2 and we are trying to index to A. It is now out of bound. So it depends on which version you get, because depending on which version you get, the initial value is different. These values are different. So yours may actually crash, and some other people's may not crash. But I'll just trace it, as I would just basically look through your traces to see whether you do the trace correctly. As soon as I can. Sorry about that answer. I know that's not what you guys want to hear. But now at least you know what it is like, so that's helpful.
Yeah.
That's your extra credit?
So extra credit?
Extra credit.
Still or only if you
No, it is extra credit because there are cases where it will not transfer.
I don't want that.
Okay, that's good. It's still extra credit as long as you don't really.
I started one, A bracket 1 as 0, and it didn't crash. But if you start above with